he was clean-shaven. I thought about for the 15th time since I had first seen him that I could easily spend the rest of my day just watching him clean that pool. The thing was, Tammy's pool wasn't used all that often by my estimate. Considering her situation, divorced with no kids and a big empty house, I thought I had a pretty good idea what the two of them were doing when he came around. At least, I liked to think that I did. Finally, the dreamy young man walked into Tammy's house, and I slowly stood and walked inside. The rest of the margarita mixture I had whipped up was just the right amount for the glass I had in my hand. With a quick twirl of the straw, I turned and walked back towards the bedroom. My plans for the day had involved doing some things around the house. Having enjoyed the pool boy show for a few moments, I figured it was a good time to get that done so I could relax for the rest of the day. Cleaning usually was another good way to get my mind off of Robbie anyway, and when combined with a margarita, it was an excellent combination. Just before I started, I remembered that I had left the door slightly open when I came inside. I quietly walked back to the door so I could shut it. When the door was just about closed, however, I heard a door open and shut. I thought the pool boy might be walking out back to his truck for something, so with a surge of excitement, I opened the door and walked back out onto the porch with my drink still in hand. At first, I was disappointed because he wasn't walking back out to his truck. Then, just before walking back inside, I caught movement from the corner of my eye.
The votes are in.
Off to the right side of my porch, I could see into Tammy's backyard because her house was set closer to the road than mine was. The door that I had heard opening and shutting wasn't the front door.
It was yummy. I
eased over to the right side of my porch
pizza
and watched as the toned and tanned young stud removed his shirt to get ready for pool cleaning. At least that is what I thought he was getting ready for. That was before I saw Tammy walk around him, running her fingers over his shoulder.
We had one pepperoni and then got a chicken and broccoli.
And my mouth fell open as Tammy proceeded to give the pool boy a teasing kiss on his lips. That was interesting enough, but when she reached down and started unbuckling his belt, things got extremely exciting. My juices were pooling between my legs. I looked on in shock as Tammy went slowly down to her knees and lowered his pants. The large bulge was clearly visible from even where I was standing. I was impressed, to say the least. Tammy cupped his balls as she licked and nibbled on the bulge through his underwear. With her free hand, she massaged her breasts. Slowly, she lowered his underwear and his manhood poked proudly out. Then, Tammy licked the tip of his cock.
Sorry, it took me a little bit longer than I thought it would.
Up and down. Before I even knew it, I was absently licking the mixing straw of my margarita as I watched.
Yeah, we had a lot of catching up
to. In the sight by Tammy's pool. I'm certain the pool boy removed his shirt just to torture me. Sweet Lord, he was a hunk of a man if I.
You don't think Minx can finish in an hour?
Even if he was still in college. When Tammy began to slowly take his cock into her mouth.
Yeah, traffic was a lot worse today than it usually is.
And placed the glass.
Everybody and their mom's out.
Straw in my mouth.
You're talking about dinner, never mind.
Went to my left breast as the other one began moving the straw back and forth in my mouth. I imagined that big cock in front of me and what I'd do to it if it were. After all, I figured there's nothing wrong with a little fantasy. I have never been so glad to be still wearing my lace lingerie as I rubbed my swollen nipples through the thin material. As I continued to suck on the straw and what it represented, my other hand snaked down to my swollen wet pussy. I noticed that Tammy's free hand was rubbing her pussy at the same time, and God, if that didn't make it even hotter. At the perfect pace, I used the lace and rubbed my slit and squeezed my nipples.
The forces underneath him.
I caught myself moaning a little and clamped it down quickly so I wouldn't be discovered. Lucky for me, they were too far into their desire for each other to hear that small moan. Tammy was taking him in her mouth, over halfway down his shaft, and her pace was enough to make the college boy throw his head back and moan loudly. Neither one seemed to have even the smallest care of how loud they were. Tammy began to moan loudly as she plunged her hand down into her pants to finger herself. The sloshing and slurping sounds of a hot blowjob were filling the air, and it was more than music to my ear.
I just had to get rid of some of the other ones I
moved
wasn't
the
doing.
lingerie one side and plunged my middle finger into my dripping pussy. Pulling it out, I smeared my juices over my clit and rubbed quickly. It was too much as my knees grew weak and I knelt down on the porch. I squeezed my nipple hard and barely kept from moaning. When I opened my eyes again, the view wasn't as good, so I stood back up and plunged my finger inside again. I wasn't able to keep from moaning quietly, but I figured it was plenty quiet enough with all the noise they were making. Tammy then took her blowjob to the next level and began to deep throat him. As she did that, his moans grew louder, and so did mine. I could feel an orgasm growing inside of me, so I took in the sight of Tammy plunging herself onto his big cock and the sweat glistening off of the pool boy's chest. Quickly, again, I rubbed my clit and my knees buckled as the orgasm washed over me like a river of ecstasy. I closed my eyes as I rubbed myself through the amazing feelings. God, it felt like forever and a day since I felt that good, and I certainly didn't want to stop. Susan? That sweet-sounding voice shook me to my very core. My eyes popped open and I was shocked to see Tammy staring at me over the fence. The college boy was staring at me as well. Apparently, I had been much louder than I thought, and they heard me. I turned to run inside without a word. No, wait! Tammy called. I stopped just inside my door, but didn't want to turn around. God, how embarrassing it was to get caught fingering myself to orgasm while spying on the neighbor. I couldn't turn around and look at her in the eyes. I figured I may even have to move to another house. Susan, Tammy pleaded.
Yeah, I see that.
Her voice was a little off, and I wanted to turn around, but I couldn't. I did stare a glance, and she was motioning with her finger for me.
So I get the first one.
She even mouthed it from the view of her lips, but I just looked and shut the door. I couldn't go over there after getting caught masturbating myself on the porch. I wished 1,000 things in those few moments. I wished I had just drank coffee inside and gotten my chores done. I wished Robbie wasn't on a business trip, as if that would mean any pleasure was coming in my direction. Most of all, I wished I had the freedom that Tammy had to enjoy hot sex with a glistening, muscled stud like that pool boy. I was so flustered that I barely noticed the doorbell ringing. When I finally did, I walked over there, still absently rubbing myself. I stopped to open the door and looked into Tammy's beautiful blue eyes. She was a little shorter than me and had just a slight sheen to her skin thanks to their activity by the pool. I figured she must be here to ask me to mind my business. That must be what she wanted, because she sure as hell wouldn't want a 39-year-old housewife gawking at her good time. Tammy didn't say a word, so I started to apologize. With my mouth barely open, she said, "Don't apologize, Susan." I backed away. "Tammy, I can't." Tammy looked me up and down and touched my shoulder to move my robe to one side. "It's okay, Susan. Don't be sorry. I'm not sorry you saw us." Tammy stepped to the side and the pool boy stepped up.
Curtis, what are you doing?
I could smell his pheromones and I could smell her sex. Every cell in my body was trembling with desire. I took his toned and tanned chest as he spoke. "I'm not either." He stepped further inside and towards me, his fingers sliding the other side of my robe off of my shoulder. I knew my breaths were coming faster every second as I backed up a little bit. Tammy moved her right hand to her breasts and began to massage them. "Can we come inside?" I wanted to scream yes and no at the same time. My head swam with the scent of the pool boy as he was only 1 foot from me. He smelled like desire. Robbie smelled, well, sterile, like our sex. In that moment, all I could think of were the years of suspected infidelity that my supposed other half was guilty of. It wasn't that I wanted revenge so much as I was angry because of all the attention Robbie had given to someone else that should have gone to me. He should have noticed my body the way the two people standing in my living room were noticing me right then. The correct answer was no. They couldn't come inside. I should close the door behind them, feel like I was going crazy for refusing such a perfectly hot and exciting proposal and get to my housework. I opened my mouth to say no, but before I could, I saw the lust-filled look in the pool boy's eyes as his eyes searched my body and then traveled back up to catch my gaze. That look seduced the no, conquered it. One glance down showed that his big and strong cock was standing proudly at attention. Looking back up to his face, he quickly whispered,
No, I didn't make it.
yes, and then charged at his large frame. For a moment, I thought it was too aggressive and that I might even push him down onto the floor, but he only took a small step backwards to steady himself before he wrapped his arms around me and placed his lips onto mine. His tongue eagerly searched and explored mine as we kissed deeper and more passionately than I could ever remember kissing anyone. His upper lip had droplets of pheromones and sweat. I was his. There's no way to know how long that lasted, but by the time he pulled away, his hands had already masterfully removed my lingerie halfway down so that my breasts were revealed. He leaned down and scooped my light form into his arms, picking me up so that my dripping wet pussy rested directly over his cock. I moaned loudly and gyrated my hips wildly back and forth, rubbing my pussy on his swollen shaft as his lips encircled and suckled my right nipple. "Oh my God," I whispered as he hungrily sucked on my nipple, then switched to masterfully repeat the process on the left side. I wrapped my arms around his neck and arched backwards. This was the most amazing, hungry animal sex I could ever remember feeling, and I was way too far gone to care if I was supposed to be right or wrong.
What the hell?
In that moment, I didn't give a damn. Slowly, I pushed off of him just enough to get my feet on the floor and then lowered to my knees. I kissed his chest on the way down his stomach and paused only for a brief second before I pulled his underwear down and revealed his cock. First, I grabbed it with both hands and worked back and forth. He threw his head back in pleasure, and I moved one hand to his balls while I eagerly wrapped my lips around that wonderful manhood of his. Quickly and noisily, I sucked his cock hard and drew powerful moans from his lips. It was the best moment of the last decade of my life, and that was before I noticed what Tammy was doing across the room. She had removed her top completely and was fingering herself passionately. I was surprised at the want and lust in her eyes, only because she wasn't looking at the pool. She was looking directly at me. Tammy licked her lips as she squeezed her mouth, and her lips clucked violently as she drew herself closer to an orgasm. The sight of her with her fingers in her pussy and licking her lips at me took me even farther over the edge of passion, and I began to suck the pool boy off faster and harder. Finally, he pulled back with a shout and blew his load into my chest. The warm cum covered me quickly as I didn't hesitate to rub it around with my eager hand. I lay back onto his soft bed as I reached my hand down to my wet pussy once again. Just before I could plunge my fingers down my lingerie, I looked up to see a lustful Tammy hovering on all fours between my thighs. She smiled as she drove her finger through the pool boy's cum and licked it off. She then surprised me again by grabbing my hand and moving it away once again. "Let me," she said simply. With that, she slowly pulled down my lingerie the rest of the way off of my thighs and tossed it to the side. Before she went back to me, the pool boy returned the favor and pulled her bottoms off of her. She crawled up to me, laying her body against mine as she licked the cum from my chest and sucked my lips. I had never been with another girl before, but this was just getting better with each passing second. Slowly, she licked and teased my nipples and moved her fingers around my dripping pussy lips without actually touching me. "Yes," I begged before I even knew it. Tammy winked at me and slowly licked my stomach on her way down between my legs. She was in no rush as she masterfully ran her tongue around my pussy and lightly fingering me. I was so ready that when she moaned and her tongue touched my hard, swollen clit, I exploded with another mind-numbing orgasm, Tammy didn't even pause as she lapped up every bit of cum around my pussy and started with 3 fingers, fast and hard, giving me still more pleasure than I had ever known. I ejaculated and squirted all over my face. Oh! Tammy said loudly. I opened my eyes and spotted the pool boy behind her, cock still large and hard, plunging into her. The rhythm of Tammy's fingers in my pussy was driven by the powerful thrusts of the pool. I ejaculated over and over. She moaned, and I screamed for more while clutching the area rug. She removed her fingers and put her face into my pussy, licking and flicking my swollen clit. And with her hands, Tammy squeezed and massaged each of my breasts as she looked inside my steps. She would move forward and suck my clit every few seconds as well. It was a thunderous amount of feeling washing over me like a flood. Suddenly, the pace of the pool boy increased, and Tammy was driven closer to her own orgasm. With each thrust he made, she drove me closer to another climax as well. After a few more seconds, she rose up from my thighs and screamed in bliss as her orgasm took her. As soon as she exhaled once more,
One is good.
back onto me and suckled my pussy lips, worked over my clit with her fingers.
Yes, I need one.
Within mere seconds, I had yet another incredible orgasm. I could have laid there in heaven for the rest of my life, but the best part was yet to come. Tammy crawled to one side of me.
I don't want to fight against war.
Do you want him to fuck you, Susan?
Alright, well.
I looked down at his amazingly erect cock, positioned just inches from my slopping wet pussy, and didn't think once. Oh yes, yes, fuck my pussy, fuck me hard. He grabbed both of my legs and positioned them on his shoulders. Within a few seconds, his large shaft easily plunged into me. I shouted a few more obscene words as he filled me so perfectly. Tammy began sucking on my nipples again, and it felt so damn good I wanted it to go on forever. There was something else I wanted, though. Reaching to one side, I guided Tammy towards my head and said, I want to lick your pussy. I was insane with lust as she positioned her dripping pussy lips over my face. Reaching up to her sexy hips, I jerked her down onto my face and licked her straight through the middle of her slit, then up to her clit. Repeating what I knew felt good to me, I toyed with her clit and licked her inside and out as well as I could. Oh, fuck! Tammy shouted. Damn, the pool boy said. Feels fucking good. Oh, yes, yes, harder, fuck me harder, I shouted. The pool boy turned me over, and I turned Tammy over, so that now I was on my knees and she was on her back. I went towards her spread thighs, but a stinging clap of my ass got my attention first. My hips bucked, and I looked back at him with a look of warmth and meaning. He slapped my ass again and then plunged hard into my pussy. Steadily and freakishly hard, the pool boy fucked me on my living room floor. Twice more, I had a thunderous orgasm and drew Tammy to several more myself. After what felt like eternity in bliss, I stopped moaning because I was almost too exhausted to voice how amazing the pool boy's cock felt inside of me. He moved me upwards, and I lay on top of Tammy, breast to breast and face to face. Our thighs were both spread before the pool boy. He squeezed my ass with his strong hands as he fucked Tammy for several minutes. And then he switched up and fucked me again for several minutes. Quicker and faster he moved from one wet pussy to the other. All the while, I was doing everything I could think of to Tammy. Sucking her earlobe, biting her neck, and paying a lot of attention to her lustful lips came easier to me than breathing. Finally, the pool boy began to moan, and we knew he was about to blow his load for the last and final time. I rolled over and got to my knees at the same time Tammy did. We each took his cum directly in the face, and then licked his cock clean. I kissed Tammy one more time, and then we both fell to the carpet in exhaustion. I'm not sure exactly how long we lay there, but it might as well have never ended. When we finally started moving, I went to Tammy and helped her up. The pool boy was getting himself to his feet as well by that time. There were no words to describe the moment that had passed by the three of us, so no words were really spoken. We all went to the front porch at least partially dressed. Tammy and the pool boy blew kisses as they walked back to her house. Sitting here today, I can say for sure that those minutes or hours were the greatest of my entire life, to that point, at least as far as sexual things go. Nothing else even comes close. When Robbie finally did return from his trip, I didn't mind as much. There was no pawning after him as he lazily walked around the house. All I did was mind my business, because I knew something that he did not know. When at last the time comes that he does take another trip, I know exactly what I will do. I won't have coffee in the kitchen, and I will not do my household chores. What I will do is go to my jewelry box and open the otherwise empty third drawer. In there was a modest business card, the type that you could get for free in the thousands. It was a card for a pool cleaning service. When I was certain Robbie was gone again, I would grab that card and call for the young man to come clean my pool. They say hindsight is 20/20, and that should mean that we know what mistakes we make. They suggest that knowing what mistakes we made in the past will keep us from making those same mistakes in the future. It is good and sound advice for those who subscribe to it, but I have a different view on what they say. I say, what the hell do they know? When the phone rings on the other end of the line will be a young man. I will tell him my name is Susan and what neighborhood I live in and ask him to come clean my pool. He'll come to do a great job at cleaning, and he will even bring his little helper. Of course, things aren't always as they seem. The helper that the pool boy will bring is named Tammy. She's my next door neighbor, of course. We will meet in either my house, or her house, or by her pool. It's different every time. One thing that is certain is that I will stay on that pool cleaning service as long as that young man will come and clean my pool. Of course, things are not always as they seem. I don't even have a pool.
My surprise threesome. MFM. Double penetration threesome.
No.
Janie Draper. Narrated by Vivian
Motherfucker.
Fox.
A party member has been defeated.
I died.
Okay, I drank more than I ought to, but I was having a lot of fun. Angie had told me about the party at her friend's house, and we staggered over there, having started early with a few bottles of red wine. Tina, her friend from work, had been very happy to see us both, offering real cheek kisses, not those pretentious air kisses,
Thank you, kid.
and invited us in. The ground floor was buzzing with guys and girls, all pressing against each other or brushing past
Circuit's
us.
useful.
After introducing us to a dozen guys and girls whose names I promptly forgot, Tina left the two of us to circulate and make sure no one was trashing her parents' house. Angie refilled her glass of wine and started casting around for suitable guys. She hadn't had sex in a whole week, she told me. It had been a month for me, but I wasn't as driven as she was. She seemed determined to get us both laid
I'm not very good at
before the end of the
tanking.
night, and I was content to let her do the hard work of reeling in the eye candy. If we scored, fine. If not, I always had my pink vibrator at home. What we ended up with was Dan and Ash. Both were in their mid-20s, topping us by 4 years. Angie seemed to gravitate toward Dan, leaving me with Ash. I didn't mind. Both were good-looking guys and fun to chat with, even if Tina's music